Hi, I'm Dr. Selena Fisk, and welcome to this episode of Make Data Talk. In this podcast, I help you turn your spreadsheets into stories in a way that is practical, accessible, and hopefully a whole lot more useful than your grade 9 maths textbook. Today I'm going to be riffing about choosing the right numbers to share with other people whenever we talk to them about data or we bring data into the conversation. I'm going to talk about why it's important to get this right, and through this episode I'm going to share a few tips with you on how you can do it better next time. I've been listening to the book Outlive by Peter Attia and Bill Gifford. I say listen because I deliberately use Audible for most of the books that I consume. One of the things I heard in the book over the weekend was a really interesting use of numbers and data, but a perception about hormone replacement therapy for postmenopausal women. Now, if you'd asked me what my perception was of HRT prior to listening to the book and listening to what Peter Attia had to say, I would have said, well, I don't know too much about it. But one of the things I do know is that there is a connection between HRT, hormone replacement therapy, and an increased risk of breast cancer. That's probably what I would have been able to tell you. I haven't done a whole lot of research into HRT, but it's just, I guess, I don't even know where my understanding or belief about the link to cancer came from. I am assuming the media, but as I say, that's kind of my prevailing perception. So I was listening to this book, obviously curious about HRT and what he had to say. And he was saying that it's actually really problematic because this one piece of research was used and a lot of people steer away from HRT now because of the outcomes of this research. But he says that in this new kind of medicine 3.0, which he talks about, he says we actually need to be kind of questioning the research and thinking about how it applies to us or doesn't apply to us. And, you know, we make evidence-informed decisions about our health based on what research we have available. Now, the really interesting thing that he says from a numbers perspective is that he says the research found that women who used HRT had a 24% increased chance of developing breast cancer in their lifetime. Unfortunately, media people picked up the fact that there was an increased risk in breast cancer, and that's impacted this, I guess, community perception about this drug, which he argues is actually pretty helpful. Interestingly, he flips it and he says, if you look at the original research, what you'll find is that, yes, it's a 24% increase, but the increase is actually from 4 out of 1,000 women experiencing breast cancer to 5 out of 1,000 women experiencing breast cancer. So it's an additional 1 person out of 1,000. Now, obviously, an extra person experiencing cancer is not what we want. And equally, the increase from 4 to 5 people out of 1,000 is quite insignificant, really, when we think about the bigger picture and I guess the broader messaging of HRT causes breast cancer that kind of has happened in the media. I found this really fascinating to learn that about HRT, but also as a way to reflect on the importance of the numbers that we share with people in a data story or in a conversation where we bring data into the picture. Because depending on the data that we share, the listener or the other person that we're talking to, they're going to take really different messages from that sharing potentially based on what we share and what we choose to include or exclude from the conversation. So had the research come out and said there is an increased risk from 4 out of 1,000 to 5 out of 1,000, that's really different messaging to coming out saying that there's a 24% chance of or increased chance of developing breast cancer if you're on hormone replacement therapy. Listening to this book got me also thinking about the book that I read 2 years ago in 2022 called Making Numbers Count, which was written by Chip Heath and Carla Starr. And the subtitle for the book is The Art and Science of Communicating Numbers. And what they do in their book is they propose challenges with sharing numbers and they provide really sound recommendations about how to do it better. There are lots of examples through their book where they give an example of, I guess, poor communication of numbers or poor use of numbers in a conversation. And then they give follow-up examples of how you could do it better and then how you could do it even better again. One of the issues that they flag in their book is using really large or really small numbers, and they say that people struggle to conceptualize the change. And I think about a little while ago, at the beginning of the financial year, I was looking at my financial reporting software. So I use Xero as my accounting software. And one of the things it was telling me was that my profit had dropped 9,000% from where it was the previous year at the same time in the financial year, really early on in the financial year, obviously. So we know that our numbers swing around and swing and move a lot in those early days. But connecting that back to one of those key messages from Chip Heath and Carla Starr is that a drop of 9,000% is really hard to conceptualize. So when we're sharing numbers and communicating with numbers with other people, we need to actually try to bring it down to something that people can relate to. So for me, it would have been far better for me to look at the dollars, for example, that I had been selling or that I had coming in, and looking at it at that metric as opposed to percentages, because we know that, even a doubling of something, it becomes a 100% increase, which sounds quite significant, but it could actually be, that somebody gets 4 out of 10 in a quiz as opposed to 2 out of 10 in a quiz, but they've had 100% improvement. So we need to be really selective about how we use numbers, particularly large ones, and also percentages, because they can be really problematic. One of the percentage examples that Chip Heath and Carla Starr give in Making Numbers Count is, it's a pretty gross one. It's that 28% of men don't always wash their hands after using the bathroom at work. So one of the suggestions that they make, so rather than, just sharing a percentage with people, we want to make it a little bit more human. We want to make it something that they can relate to. And so they suggest flipping that 28% of men don't often wash their hands after using the bathroom at work to, and this is gross, but at least 1 in every 4 men you shake hands with have potentially not washed their hands since using the bathroom. So one of the recommendations that they make for percentages is actually to try and make it something that people, is more tangible to people and they can make sense of, as opposed to having that level of, cognitive load and thinking required about what is 28%. Is 28% high, middle, low? Is it worse than what I would expected? There's a whole lot of thinking that's going on there. There's less thinking involved in 1 in 4 people that you shake a hand with has potentially not washed their hands after using the bathroom. It's just a bit more concrete. It's a bit more tangible. And it just means that people kind of remember it, or are more likely to remember that statistic moving forward. You could also say really similar things about percentages when it comes to interest rate increases and drops. We in Australia have just gone through quite a few interest rate hikes over the last 18 months or so. And while the interest rate changes are generally 0.25% whenever it happens, we see that the media convert that to what is an average size mortgage, what is the actual dollar figure that contributes each fortnight or month to a person's repayments, because that's where it becomes more tangible. So knowing that an interest rate has gone up or is going to be dropped by 0.25% is interesting, and it's good to know if it's getting better. It's obviously alarming if it's getting worse. But the rubber hits the road when we can think about, that actually means for me a change of $450 every month or whatever it might be, because that then becomes, where do I find the $450? What do I need to spend less money on to be able to find this extra cash? And it's where it becomes tangible, as opposed to the percentage is quite abstract. So this episode's a little bit different to one that I did a few weeks ago, which was about what data to choose and what matters to me. This is about not so much choosing the right data, but choosing the right way of representing the information that we have. If a percentage is going to be misleading, or if it isn't the best way to represent the change or the growth or the movement, then rethink how you could represent that in a way that is more personable and is more tangible to people. One way you can do this that's suggested in the Making Numbers Count book is, wherever possible, is to compare, particularly if we're talking about lengths or distances, compare with landmark sizes or size of football fields, for example, because that might be more tangible for, and I guess more understandable for some people, rather than just giving them distances in terms of hundreds or thousands of meters, or decimals for kilometers. One of the other really good examples of this in the book is where they talk about the fact that, say, we could tell people that a single Pringle, who only ever eats a single Pringle, but anyway, I'm going to continue. A single Pringle has 10 calories, right? So, okay, that's good to know. What does that mean? Is 10 good? Is it bad? Is it low? What is it like compared to other chips? There's a whole lot of overthinking we could do. But one of the ways that they have represented it and said that a better way of, sharing that information with people might be to say, you actually probably need to walk about the length of 2 football fields to burn off a single Pringle. Now, that for me is something that would deter me from starting the Pringle journey, because once you pop, you can't stop, right? So that's a lot of football fields if you keep going. But it's a tangible way that actually makes that 10 calories more meaningful to somebody. And the challenging thing with this is that that's something that I remember and that stands out to me from the book. It's not going to work for everybody, but it's about knowing who your audience is, what matters to the person that you're trying to communicate this data to. And if you are wanting them to take action or to understand the sense of urgency that you see in the numbers, or you're trying to ask them for some advice perhaps, and you need them to really understand the context before they provide that advice, then you absolutely need to be thinking, how do we best share the numbers and the data with them in a way that's actually really going to land for them? The last thing I will say about this is that it's not easy, because often the outputs, the dashboards we have, the reports that we get, they present data in a particular way. But if you do see that the information you've got is not serving you, it's not serving the people that you need to share that data with, then hopefully you're building the skills and the confidence to be able to kind of think critically about those numbers and go back and say, actually, a raw figure here would be more useful. Or the size of the change would be more beneficial than the one point in time result. So this is a really hard one to end on, because there's no hard and fast rules about how to do this. But I just wanted to get you thinking today about how do you represent the same data but in different ways to make it more likely to land with the people that you're sharing it with. So thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Make Data Talk. As always, it's great having you here. I really appreciate the reviews that people are giving, and the fact that many of you are sharing these with clients and colleagues. I really appreciate all of that. As you probably know, this is also available as a newsletter on my LinkedIn account. So the newsletter is called Make Data Talk. You'll be able to find it if you are connected with me, but I can be found at Dr. Selena Fisk. As always, stay safe and look after yourself.